Where's the hole?
Okay. Those questions came from a set of factors that were identified as being risk factors in being vulnerable to disaster impacts. I could expand that list mightily, but that's just a short list we came up of some key factors that can affect a person's vulnerability to disaster impacts. Somebody, let me ask, female sex worker, why did you put yourself way at the far side of the... And by the way, I think you worked out if you were on that. I'll put it this way. I asked the last question, did you have disaster insurance? Those of you who are on the left side, tough luck. World Bank better come along with an insurance program. You're the ones who are most likely to have the most severe impacts. Those of you who are on the right were the least likely. It's interesting as we had such a narrow space that you all ended up crammed in the same spot. Usually, like at each side, usually there's a little bit of variation in between, either to the right or the left. But you guys who are on that side, you need insurance. Well, why do you think female sex worker? Why do you think that is?
The answer to almost every question was no. You're no status, unlikely to have much control over your property, wouldn't know how to read necessarily. But I'm making a lot of money.
I don't know, you could be really good.
Yeah, note all the questions. I can't remember all the exact factors, but you don't have much agency.
Your average female sex worker in most of the countries that GFDR and the bank is working in faces pretty heavy discrimination and marginalization to the point that in some countries they've been denied access into evacuation shelters and other really nasty things that happened, and denied access to relief, beaten up, you name it. So what do you think are the chances that they're going to be well integrated into that our female sex workers are going to be well integrated into the early warning system?
Not very high.
Yeah. How about let's have a few more and see what happened. Male migrant worker who didn't speak the local language. Why do you think you ended up on that side? Why do you think you're really vulnerable?
Actually, for some of the same reasons. I mean, male in some ways favor, but again, probably lack of assets. Being a migrant wouldn't very, very low chance of actually owning a home or having any. Again, language barrier. So early warning or other communication factors, disaster, what's important in that area. Probably also doesn't have a large support system too.
Yeah. In Thailand, after the Boxing Day tsunami, there was some documentation done, which was very hard to do, of what happened to who were mostly unregistered migrant workers. And they were mostly men, because there weren't very many women coming for the sorts of jobs they were doing. And they were in a dreadful position. They couldn't access post-disaster compensation and relief and recovery support. They weren't allowed to register for these systems. And it was organizations that realized they were in strife and cared about them that tried to quietly go and help them. And they were not popular with the Thai government for doing that. So yeah, it's a very, very invisible group, and it can be male or female. You can be incredibly vulnerable. What do you think could be an added vulnerability if you were a female migrant worker who didn't speak the local language? We had another ethnic minority. We'll try with the ethnic minority. What do you think would happen?
So clearly, I mean, I was a female petty trader. I think the answer to whether I was able to read and write was no, which I think is usually the case in many countries we work on. I was from an ethnic minority, so the whole issue of status in the community definitely not favorable. And also in terms of owning any property, that's usually not the case for this group, and particularly for women. And then the whole issue of also controlling resources inside the household. In my construct about what a female petty trader from an ethnic minority life is, definitely no control over that. So I ended up really almost climbing on the wall as well.
What about our poor female household head, our farmer?
Well, again, most likely it's subsistence farming, so definitely my vulnerability is increased by climate events or drought, flooding, down to income. I'm the head household head, but probably don't have a home, most likely, or the land so on. And then all the competing parties as well. Children.
Do you think that you are as vulnerable as this poor elderly female wheelchair ethnic minority? Do you think you would be as vulnerable as her? Same? Less? More?
Less.
Why less?
I hope I have health and mobility.
Bit of a difference there. It seems you're both female, but you have different levels of vulnerability. So one of the messages there is we definitely find that on average, female vulnerability tends to be higher in many situations than male. But you have to be careful. There's different females, and we have to stratify that. Not all females are going to have the same degree of vulnerability, are they? And for example, where's the mayor's wife?
Oh, she's over there.
Yeah. I mean, why were you on the right side? You're a woman.
Yes, but I'm very privileged. So I'm in a wealthy household. My husband takes care of everything. I may even work, so I can do work. So yes.
And differences between some of the males and females. Now here we have a female who's very privileged and had herself on a very low vulnerability.
I'll just say, I don't know actually, because maybe my husband is. I saw it, I would say there are these levels.
But it also depends on, I mean, in some places, a village mayor may not be any more affluent in the villages. There's some countries like Papua New Guinea in remote areas that actually the village mayor has that much more access to assets or education than many of the
What
surrounding.
would the mayor possibly have, though, that my 14-year-old orphaned Indigenous boy farm labor, even in a poorer community, might not have?
I mean, I think they for sure have advantages. I mean, they may obviously speak the language. Whether they can read or write is not necessarily clear, but they like to speak the language. They have status. You know, they're likely to be first access to any new resources into the village in response. So for sure they have advantages, but they're not necessarily a wealthy mayor that we may consider. In some countries that may be the case.
And also, if we compare, where's the mayor? Where's
The councilwoman? That's me.
the female councillor, sorry.
Yeah.
Now, in relative degrees, again, relative between male and women, you're a powerful female, where you put yourself on the side of being far less vulnerable. You seem to have a good life, or to have the right factors. How would you compare with this? I don't understand. You're a woman who should be more vulnerable. How would you compare the elderly male garbage pickup? Who's educated?
You can read it.
Well, I have
How
some.
do you feel about her?
I don't think I would think about it. When I'm a garbage picker, I don't think much about it.
Sorry, I worded that badly. Yeah.
No.
Do you feel safer with her? Do you think she's safer?
I think I feel insecure, and to add to the that's very the thing. Some projects that we
So the main point of that exercise is just to get to that, all those the complexity of this. That although as we work through this, we'll talk a lot about women, girls, boys, even. But to keep in mind that there's so many nuances to this, and we run the risk of stereotyping again. Women in this country or this place will be like this, and like that. And we go in and we do an analysis, and we find out that the situation was far more nuanced than we thought, and many layers of vulnerability in some places and in some situations. Women may be more vulnerable to disaster impacts than women in places that it's more often. But it will also be determined by various other social factors, socio-cultural factors, their income, their power levels, their access to resources, and so on. So I hope you like that one. It's a Any comment on it? Any reflection from anyone?
I guess just thinking about the mayor's wife. Although she was way over on the right, she's probably very unstable position in a sense. The mayor died for some reason or something like that. I wonder what her stability would be.
That's a very good point.
That's a very good point.
It is a very interesting point. I was doing needs assessments. It's back to Aceh and the tsunami, Boxing Day tsunami, with my colleagues from the Indonesian Red Cross. And we were interviewing people who had been put into barracks, this very peculiar thing that happened on a military model. And we were going through an analysis of their vulnerability and their capabilities and just their situation and what their recovery needs would be. And we came out with a surprise finding for most of the people who were going to use this information. There were women from upper middle class backgrounds in parts of Aceh who had lost all their male relations, and they were now in this barracks, and they were used to having servants and a lot of support in the household. And in those barracks, you had to cook for yourself and look after yourself. And these women were not used to doing it, and were not used to being alone trying to make decisions. And they, I won't bore you with the details, but we determined they were at great risk of both exploitation and or sexual assault because of the precarious situation they found themselves in. And these were women who had enjoyed quite a position of envy for most in society. So you're quite right. The wife of the mayor could be at risk. Where's that mayor again? Now she's left. Look, she's already abandoned you.
Yes.
Okay, well done. You've already been talking about all this. So there's much need to go through it. Some of you have seen it for the second time. Guess what? It's the same list for social exclusion as Virginia. Very similar. Okay. I'm going to do this really quickly. What we found and what you can see from the exercises, women and girls are often disproportionately vulnerable with all the caveats that we just went through. 2 natural disasters and climate change impacts. And it's to do the way that the World Bank likes to group the information about what causes this, I will use this terminology, is a difference between, and it came up in actually in Maria Beatrice's presentation, the difference between their endowments, their agency, and their opportunities. That these are the key areas of gender difference, where you get inequalities emerging. Just a quick review of that, of what Mary Beatrice already put up, but she had it in a little wheel. So the way the bank defines this is these are the areas of health, education, social protection, economic activities, and access and control over productive assets. If I'm a female petty trader and I can get some credit to grow my business, if drought comes along, I just might have a few extra assets that I can keep or sell or use, something to protect me more from the impacts of keeping me from going destitute. Voice and agency. Agency is one of our definitions this morning. And that's to have the ability to be able to participate in decision making on equal terms and in governance mechanisms. In the world of disasters, it would be a lot of the disaster risk management and climate change agencies at the national level having a voice in there and having their issues and concerns known and addressed. And then you get to the lower levels, the regional and local levels, in things like community disaster response teams, having a voice and a presence, that kind of thing, and freedom from violence. What is the interface? And because the other thing I discovered about this room yesterday is if you're at the back, you've got to squint like anything to see some of the stuff at the front. Some of the slides today I've actually printed out so you can also see them. So there's one in your, it may not have the blue like mine, called the Summary of the DRM Gender Interface, which I'm about to put up. And if you just take a quick look at that, it just gives an indication of where under those. Do you not have one? No. Andres will grab you one. For now, if you can share while we find some more. It basically gives you some.
Nobody has them yet. So.
Gives you some indication of where the interface is between those categories that were developed in that broader development framework on gender and where in these three areas where gender gaps emerge in the experience and in the results of research that's been conducted on the topic. So just take a quick skim of it and you'll see some of the things that we've talked about already reflected in there. But some of the key factors that affect whether women are going to be more vulnerable than men.
Can you put it on the screen, Cynthia? Also?
I can't. I don't have it on the screen.
Oh.
It's one of these funny things between compatibility of the systems.
Okay.
So,
Okay.
Brilliant. Okay. So just to take a really quick look at it, greater mortality, health risks. We talked about violence. Education can be a factor. Whether women have access to social protection. In some contexts, it's whether men have it too. Certain types of social protection. The fact that women are found so predominantly in the informal sector in many countries, and it means that they often get missed in post-disaster needs assessments and compensation. A post-disaster assessment that did a social analysis led by a World Bank gender specialist in 2011 after the Thailand floods found that female farmers have been completely bypassed in getting replacements of cash and farm assets. There's less access to credit. That was another finding of that same PDA, that both poor men and poor women had been really affected and were not getting access to credit for recovery, that were largely in the informal or very petty trading type areas. But women made up a larger proportion of that group of poor informal, call it business, poor informal businesses. And women's burden increases quite often after disasters. If you've had family members injured, they're often the ones looking after them. If you're trying to get food and water in a context where it's difficult to get it, it adds to the distance they may have to go to find the water, or waiting in queues for the food or whatever. They often end up with an expansion of what's already a double burden, often of both productive work and then the work to support the household. Access to resources. Your group talked a bit already about property inheritance, so you've already identified a lot of this in the group discussions already. So that's just a little summary that Margaret actually put together. I think that's a nice summary. We've also found that what's been called gender blind response, and I don't want to leave you thinking this is all just about immediate response to a disaster event. Gender blind, you could X that off and say gender blind disaster risk reduction programming, gender blind disaster preparedness, gender blind early warning systems. You could substitute those words in there all over, not just recovery and recovery, and reinforce, perpetuate, and increase inequalities, and reduce the effectiveness of interventions. And so if you're not wearing that gender lens, you could miss something really important, and people could suffer as a result. That's one of the reasons why you see higher death statistics from most disasters. Gender differences in roles and practices require gender-sensitive responses. To me, that seems a pretty basic thing. We need to understand the differences between men and women to understand what their different needs and priorities are in order to be able to respond effectively. One of the best examples of this one up here, is early warning systems that have failed to reach, in a number of cases, women, ethnic minorities, etc., and you've ended up with higher death, injury, and loss rates among those groups because of the lack of attention in the design of early warning systems to that level of community engagement on the development of things like the IEC component of the program. That's where I've often seen it fall down. The end-to-end early warning system isn't. It's only partially reaching that. So what looks neutral, it's a bit like our equity versus equality discussion, actually can affect people quite differently. And that's why, this is actually why we do gender analysis. This is why we keep banging on about gender analysis, so that we can understand these differences and learn how to frame our responses in a more sensitive and balanced manner. But it also means it helps us to identify ways that we can maybe take the opportunity to address some inequalities as well. Some examples, cash for work programs are also a common example where a program set up and it's all heavy labor. So women who need to get some temporary income to get some cash to avoid going into a negative coping strategy of selling off their assets, thereby increasing their vulnerability post-disaster. They often get missed, not intentionally or directly, but because it's often something to do with the type of labor they don't do. They have problems making childcare arrangements. They get paid less quite often. And it was really nice that in Myanmar, after a disaster there in 2008, that a consolidated effort was made of a consortium of agencies to, in some early recovery programming of cash for work, to set equal pay for men and women and to make sure that women got their pay packets. So it's things like that. There's lots of experience in setting up really gender-sensitive cash for work programs. And it's already been mentioned here, counseling. That is an area frequently missed. And for some men, the reason they turn to drink and all that is not only not finding a job, they feel they've failed their role, that they're supposed to be the family provider and protector, and they can't do it anymore, and it causes them tremendous distress. So gender is about looking at both. Lots of evidence coming along that effective roles that women play in building resilience. And I just asked Margaret to give one example from all the research you've been involved in, a very short one. And then I'll show a video of
The
that.
role of environment? Okay. Okay. So we focus quite a lot on the differential vulnerabilities of men and women, and like Cynthia said, it's not only women but men. So we had on the statistics even where men were dying more often after Hurricane Mitch because they put themselves at risk in their role as trying to protect the family and the home. So we do have to look at gender, not just women. However, we haven't talked yet, we'll be talking about the GFDRR Gender Action Plan, which has two goals. It's to look at these differential vulnerabilities and also to look at the side of the benefits of empowering women for broader resilience, because there's growing evidence that that women have different perceptions of risk. There's been really interesting exercises where the men map. When you draw sort of risk maps and women draw risk maps, they come out very, very differently. And the women's tend to be a bit more practical. And really interesting research around women's adaptation strategies. So, for example, in Bolivia, we have cases documented where in the face of, for example, decreasing agricultural yields with climate change, the men's strategy will be either to migrate or to use more natural resources, which can be maladaptive in the longer term. So use more land, more fertilizer, more XYZ to increase the yields again. Whereas the women's strategy, again, because of their role in the household, their role in the community, it's more around how can I use what I have more efficiently? How can I diversify my income, stay in the community, but diversify my livelihood in other ways. So getting into crafts or honey making or other ways to use what they have more efficiently. There's some also really nice cases we documented of grassroots women doing things like fighting to be recognized as farmers, because there's so many women in agriculture, we were talking during the break, they're not recognized as farmers. Often women do the same work, but it goes unremunerated and unrecognized. So in Uganda, women negotiated to just get small plots of land from the municipality that were being unused to do organic farming and to teach each other how to do organic farming. And from that, they were able to raise their family incomes because they had surplus that they could sell. They also convinced the men not to use their land for planting sugarcane, which depletes the soil more. So again, it's maladaptive in the longer term. So I could tell you endless stories, and particularly in the post-disaster context where this can happen. So we have to look at both sides, right, of the vulnerability, but also the agency and empowerment and the co-benefits for resilience.
Here's just a short video. Some of you might recognize this gentleman.
Empowerment of women can be a critical ingredient in building climate resilience. There's an excellent example here from India where the National Rural Livelihoods Program is supporting women's self-help groups in building their social capital, in building their access to microfinance, to all sorts of goods and services. This improves their bargaining power. But at the same time, they are able to link up to other government programs which are providing guaranteed labor in return for wage income. And the labor is used in building watershed management structures, soil erosion control, measures which are improving resilience at the level of the landscape as well. Where women don't enjoy equal rights, voice, and access to opportunities as men, they often are more vulnerable to the effects of natural disasters and climate change. Let me give an example of that from Bangladesh. Bangladesh suffers from exposure to cyclones and the flooding that brings. It can be completely devastating. In 1991, women outnumbered men by 14 to 1 among those who died as a result of cyclone-induced flooding. Now, women are acting as powerful agents of change in Bangladesh these days, where women themselves act as community mobilizers, getting the message out ahead of a cyclone early warning message to other women in the community. It's had a dramatic effect, both in reducing the gender differential in those who are dying from cyclones, but also just improving cyclone preparedness overall. An important part of what the World Bank does is make sure that in the preparation of any project, whether it's about reducing greenhouse gas emissions or mitigating climate change, or about adapting to the consequences of climate change, that we undertake good social analysis, including a gender analysis. In Lagos, Nigeria, the bus rapid transit system that was introduced with support from the World Bank is having a dramatic effect in reducing traffic congestion and reducing emissions from polluting vehicles. The team that prepared the project undertook gender analysis, consultations with groups of men and women separately in the design and the preparation of the program. They understood that it's important to structure bus stops in well-lit locations so as to reduce the potential for violence against women, for example, as they're waiting for bus at night. This is just one very small example of the kind of gender co-benefits that can come when you actually consult with women in the design of the program.
That's the last of that section. Any comments, questions? Thousands were trampled in this brush that ensued. This is, by the way, some of the research that Margaret was referring to, which will be in your resource kit. For those of you who weren't here yesterday, what we're doing is for both the social inclusion and the gender course, putting together a package of resource material on everything from tools to research to sectors you may be working in, like early warning, like various areas of infrastructure, with tools and resources that you can take a browse at, and it will go up sometime, I hope, in the next week. We'll have it done, and Andres will be helping to get it up on the GFDR website, and he'll presumably send everybody a link as to where you go to find that. So just so, so these things, anything you see like that that I show will be in those resources. To finish off this module, we'll just take a quick look at what GFDR and the bank are doing to try and get all these sort of changes that we've been talking about. Just because I think it's important, we always have to mention the Sendai Framework. Just to mention that the Sendai Framework does make mention of women. It's a bit more goes a little deeper than the Yoga Framework. Quite frankly, I wish it had been some of us wished that it had been expressed differently and focused a little better than it did, but you know what it's like when you're trying to negotiate between multiple agencies and countries, you have to come up with a commonly acceptable thing. That was their commonly acceptable thing. Women's participation is critical to DRR, and that there has to be capacity building to empower women livelihoods. So that's where the priority, I guess, focus ended up with the Sendai Framework. And presumably that means that's going to flow down to some of the planning in various countries. We'll see if they picked up on those aspects of the framework. Following on from Maria Beatriz's presentation, just to highlight, because there was not a mention, the strategy didn't go so much into disaster risk management, but it did recognize that climate change and disaster risk management are areas that the bank is going to have to pay attention to. So what they did in the strategy was made a flag that we're going to focus more on this in the future, and that we just haven't done it yet, where we will and just that the gender lens needs to be taken to anything to do with resilience that's being planned, and developing gender smart solutions to climate change. Yeah. Remember gender smart solutions? Up there, just a bit of a jogging. Some things that bring those co-benefits that Margaret and Robin were talking about. I'm going to ask Margaret to just speak briefly to this application.
Okay.
We were both involved in the work on it. Or if you prefer, I can't. But
That's fine.
yeah, you happy?
Sure.
Um,
So you want me to just talk about the plan?
yeah, just in brief.
Um,
Most of you had a chance, since most of you are GFDR, to look at that plan or go through it. Or are you familiar with the contents? Nope.
No. Okay. So the gender action plan, actually, I don't know what the slides are tonight. So it takes the framework that Maria Beatriz presented earlier and these sort of three areas for gender equality around endowments, economic opportunities, and voice and agency. And we just apply that to disaster and climate risk management and see where the entry points are and what we can do. So, and as I mentioned earlier, the aims of this action plan are both to address the different needs of men and women in disaster risk management and climate change adaptation, but then also to promote women's empowerment for broader resilience. So, you know, we always talk about gender co-benefits, but we can have co-benefits on resilience if we're working on women's empowerment. So there's two sides to this and two objectives of the plan. It's being, it was approved last year, April, this year? No.
16.
April last year. And we've been rolling it out. And I think, and hope Francis mentioned this morning, that now all GFDR projects need to be gender informed. Now, this is something that's different from the new gender strategy, right? Because where the gender strategy for the bank is getting away from being everywhere in this box ticking and looking at, say, where can we be transformative? For GFDR, for people in GFDR doing technical assistance projects, we're doing both things, right? Because we're very far behind, number one, and because we are responding also to GFDR donors that are still on this sort of making sure everything's gender informed. So it's maybe a heavier burden, but we have to catch up. I mean, we did the part of the gender, Andres is part of the team, Cristina, Cindy, we did analysis of both the GFDR portfolio and of the World Bank DRM portfolio. The DRM, you guys have to help me, I think it was about 40% gender informed, if I'm correct.
We had 12%.
For GFDR.
For GFDR.
No, but for the bank, it was about 40.
Yes,
right?
the bank was 40.
And GFDR was about 12%, which is pretty bad, right? So we're doing some catch up, and Francis has said that every single GFDR project will now be gender informed. Now, the proposal template does not include the questions that we have asked to be included yet. So we have to get there, but, and part of the plan is this training, right? Rolling out these trainings, we're trying to make them required for regional coordinators and focal points that do the review of these.
So if you can elaborate a little bit on what gender informed would look like.
Yeah. So gender informed does not mean what GFDR currently does, which is gender screened, where there's a box that says, are you doing anything to do with gender? And you have the choice of whether to tick that box or not. Because now what happens is you have that choice to tick it or not. There's no incentive to tick it because then someone might follow up with you to say, well, what did you do? So no one ticks the box. and the process is, the focal point will look at the thing and say, oh, they didn't tick the box or they did, and that's the screening. So that's really doing nothing. you can do a little less than that, but not much, right? So by gender informed, we're really saying, sort of thinking about the way the bank system has of looking at analysis, action, and M&E. So analysis, what is the information, the data that you either did or got and considered in designing this project to see if there is a gender dimension here, right? And then, if there is a gender dimension, you go to the second level of action, where what are you doing about it in terms of designing the project? Is there a component for women's empowerment or whatever to address a specific need? And then, ideally, you have an M&E part to that too, where you have an indicator to measure progress against that design aspect. So that's on the gender informed side. Now, and I think that the empowerment side is really getting to what Beatrice was saying earlier: is where can we be transformative and have these and have a DRM investment really empower women so there's gender co-benefits, but also resilience benefits from that. So, and that's a more sort of strategic approach. So, as I said, so we took, this is the bank strategy framework. We took that, applied it to DRM. The chart that you just went through with Cynthia, we just identified what are some of the entry points. I think this one has only what is the gender interface. In the gender action plan itself, which we can include in the materials. Oh, it's on the slide? No. So in the document itself, there's another column with what can you possibly do about it. Right? So what does it look like when you're dealing with that? And then within each of these areas, we proposed areas that might be lower hanging fruit. So in the area of social protection and women's access to protection measures, certainly after a disaster, but before also. Livelihoods and control of assets in the disaster setting, and early warning systems and access to information on the voice and agency. And the post-disaster context and the whole PD&A process, which some of you may have worked on, sort of goes throughout these three, and gender-based violence is one that goes across all of these. We put PD&A like this in recovery because maybe that know me are probably sick of hearing me say this, but it is a special context after disasters where you do have a window of opportunity to identify and address some gender equality issues. And sometimes they're easier to do in the post-disaster setting. And it's also a setting where all of the existing inequalities get compounded and the risks get compounded. It's probably most of you are too young to remember the Reagan years and the anti-drug campaigns of this is your brain and this is your brain on drugs with the egg frying. But I always say post-disaster recovery is development on crack, because it's like everyone does everything much faster and everything's urgent, so things go out the window on proper consultations, environmental assessment, social assessment. We do everything urgently, and a lot of things get neglected. So risks increase and they get compounded. But again, there's also a very special opportunity to do things like, it's almost standard practice now for in-recovery programs that the bank supports to say, okay, if you're giving out titles of houses or land, that put it in the woman's name or the woman and the man's name. These are things that are easily incorporated into recovery. Yes?
Question. I'm just thinking very practically, if I saw a proposal come to me now or in my new role, and it was about early warning systems and improving end-to-end early warning systems, I could see how to incorporate the gender dimension in that, in the sense that, if it's around materials, written materials, how do we overcome women who may not have the same literacy standards, or, language. I mean, I can see how to incorporate, at least mentally for me, how I could incorporate that other gender dimension. If I was, for instance, received a proposal that was looking at flood risk assessment in Tbilisi in Georgia, I struggled to a little bit more see how I could just aggregate the gender dimension or look at the gender dimension in the sense the data, you're lucky if you have really much data on demographics at all. If you can get the poverty dimension, you'd be very lucky. I mean, gender, age, income levels, I mean, those are almost impossible data sets to come across in most countries. And I guess that's a little bit where mentally I've struggled. Mostly I work on residence funds. To how to incorporate that type of dimension better. And to be able to give solid guidance to teams on how they can incorporate that better.
This is like for flood infrastructure?
And yeah, let's just say, for instance, we're going to look at a flood risk assessment in Tbilisi. They had a flood. Now we're going to do, but maybe it wasn't the worst possible flood that they could get. And so we want to look at a flood assessment to determine where we could develop flood infrastructure, flood protection infrastructure for the best benefit, both from a protected asset side of things and from a protected population aspect. And I guess mentally I'm a little bit struggling to see how, looking at this, how practically that could fit into what is a project that is plain vanilla. I mean, we see them almost every week.
So there's some good guidance, I think, on gender and infrastructure. And then, Maria Beatriz, I don't know if you want to address, when there is no data, like gender disaggregated data before that, because you can, I think, with not very much cost, generate some, right? Or, but do you want to say something about the?
Yes. So, yes, absolutely, yes. Maybe I should turn around. So, so when there is no data, you can try to collect qualitative data, which needs to be done, very carefully, but still can be done relatively quickly and not so expensively with focus groups or in-depth interviews. And that helps you assess a little bit, what particularly helps you identify solutions. So that's one possibility. The other possibility is to engage in participatory monitoring. So when you're collecting data for monitoring purposes, to involve men and women, and to also collect some indicators that way. I think for infrastructure, usually the guidance is that we are working, at least with both the transport and the energy sector, is on again, identifying what can be done in terms of all the new opportunities that the project generates, in terms of jobs, what can be done in terms of resettlement, if need be, and then in terms of mitigating gender-based violence. These are the three main pillars. And usually on gender-based violence, for instance, with infrastructure, the main thing is working with companies, with contractors, through our procurement system and codes of conduct, training, and sensitization, and also working with the community, the recipient community, to sensitize them and make them aware that, there may be a spike in gender-based violence and sort of, that's a little bit.
So I can understand it from a bank project perspective. I mean,
Right.
That makes far more sense. GFDR almost never gets into the actual flood risk reduction aspect, the actual investment in the infrastructure. It's often about doing the sort of pre-analysis to build the economic argument to even invest in flood risk reduction, for instance.
Right.
So,
it's
but
much
that's
more
where some of the
upstream.
qualitative stuff
Data.
can come in. Like, say, do a couple of focus groups, because you might have, again, women may have a different understanding or knowledge around, why the floods are happening, right? Or what are the causes, or what are some of the solutions? Doing some gets community perspective on the risk mapping process and do that separately. There's really interesting stuff that comes out of those exercises. And this is not to say that every single, Francis always gives the example of sovereign insurance. So we're not going to do there will be cases where this is just not relevant, but
And I can appreciate it, but I guess what I want to see is more opportunities for finding the relevance, rather than just say it's not relevant and the data doesn't exist, therefore throw our hands up.
Yeah. No, I think, and I hope that's what GFDR resources can be used for, right? These are technical assistance grants to do this, to gather this information, to make sure that it's the best risk management investment in leveraging these. So we can do more through that.
I think maybe too, because it's ended up being almost, I think everyone's GFDR.
No, it's now balanced.
No, we have a bit of
No, we now have a balance, okay. Instead of gender balance, bank GFDR balance. Because this afternoon I have a scenario which is actually taken from a real program, but names places are changed to protect the innocent and the guilty. And it is a scenario where, in this case, it's a major disaster risk management program. It's in this scenario, it originated from a $500,000 exercise in that country, in said country, funded by GFDR to do preliminary risk analysis and strategic planning with the government. And it has now developed into a massive couple $100 million IBRD financed project that involves continued work on the strategy because there's lots of elements of it that aren't quite bedded down yet. A major infrastructure component with the typical sort of sub-project thing where you have a big fund and then you choose which projects you're going to support in infrastructure to create better resilience and some capacity building for government. I thought it was a fairly typical in trying to cross between your worlds. If you're a mix now of both, I was going to say I could take it back and just break something up over lunchtime to turn it into just a funding proposal for GFDR for that first phase. But instead, if you think that will be helpful, because it will get at some of these issues that you're talking about, what I've put into it is that in this scenario that GFDR has been asked to continue to support the strategic planning work at that level with the government. So that it's continuing to have a role in one form or another. But you can look at it forward or backward. You could say when you look at the analysis of the bank project that's emerging at the design stage, what do you now wish you had included in your early preliminary risk analysis and planning work? So for the bank people, you can look at the PID as a PID. For the GFDR people, I could split you that way actually, and have you look at what would you now be looking for in a proposal to see to get the information that's missing. Does that sound workable, or what would you?
It'd be good to do both.
Yeah.
So we
All
get
right,
both.
we'll do it that way. Okay.
Can I just finish up on this?
Sorry, Margaret.
No worries.
That's
No,
important.
this is what it's
This
for.
is your
to
bread
stop
and butter.
making questions. So I talked about the priority areas, and just to say about rolling this out, we sort of propose activities in these two buckets, but basically it includes trainings like this, which is the first one, and we'll be doing an online version, hopefully taking it out to country offices, you'll be moving to ECA. Joaquin has asked one for the ECA region for staff in country. We could do sort of hubs of country offices. We're trying to develop small notes. The regional coordinators requested notes to say, okay, what does this look like for hydromet? What does it look like specifically for early warning? What does it look like specifically for flood infrastructure, right? So to develop a few of those, the ones we prioritize. Cindy, what are we starting on? PDNA and early warning system. So it's going to take us time to get all these resources together. And I don't want you to say, okay, well, we'll wait till we get all these resources together, but because we really need you to be the sort of champions of these issues in disaster risk management, climate risk management investments. One other thing, though, is a pool of expertise we're trying to establish with social development practitioners that would be on investment project teams or PDNA teams, for example. So I identify them and train them on the DRM side so that they can they may know the gender and social inclusion side, but they can bring in that to the team so that there's some specific social expertise on your DRAM teams, and provide them a code so that they can charge, so it's not added cost to the project either if needed. So we're trying to put together as many resources as possible. And starting with this training, just sort of raise your awareness and hopefully your sense of agency and ability to do this.
The other thing in the interim, this list of resources that I mentioned, these include things like guidance notes that other organizations have developed. It's not your own guidance note, but you should, in the interim, until this other material is developed, you should be able to work with it and adapt it. So there's some pretty universal principles in some of this stuff, so you can take it and just say, okay, how do I apply that to my context? And then in the meantime, we'll get a very specially targeted set of guidance notes.
And if you're developing a project, GFDR has these thematic programs. There is one on inclusive community resilience, it's. I don't fully understand how the finances of GFDR works, but we can push and get, with all our power to get, if you need an extra 40K, 50K to do this analysis or something and you haven't budgeted for it, let us know and we can fight for that and get you the resources and expertise if you need to be, consultants as well. So just ask for help.
Say this looks like a good point to break for lunch.
How long are we breaking for?
3/4 of an hour. Did you say 20 minutes?
I didn't say 20 minutes. Civilized.
By 1 o'clock.
Okay.
And lunch should be just outside the door and stuff.
So there was a meeting like a few weeks ago where they were tasked by Laura to try and and then what, based on those conversations, what sort of umbrella initial meeting to understand what we are. Go to, but one of basically the two things that came out of that initial meeting is one really solid project. And then quite wide. So that's rotating creative. I really want that part. Gender, unfortunately, it's very bad. I want to be specific. Okay, that's what's
There's one that says
they really I have seen.
I get it. I just like
what I usually do is I have a face style. It's called a lot. Face style, you can have salad buffet, you can have sandwich buffet, you can do all sorts of. You actually have choices.
We had a
You'll buy like
which is where you can we actually
you guys had
had some total fear of that. So they always overtake writing their budget.
No, I. So that was.
Yeah, he's someone that just left there.
I just. Thanks for the.
Yesterday on Grace, there is like
Y la mitad son.
La mitad, o sea, no, pero de repente hay alguno por ahí.
No, por eso que hay que verlos todos. Porque
Claro. No, the thing is that this time of the year, like it's harder to like every hour or 2 hours you need to check this. Is that the volume is just. I mean, like that's why in training in September, February is great. You can really have a day without checking. But this is great. Learning so much.
Yeah?
Yeah, this is great. I love this so much. I love this. This is what I need, like personally. Like, so I never feel ready to, even though I work in Haiti, I think to feel like more like confidence to go with a team or raise my voice in the context of opinion preparation. I will need to work with one team in one project, one time. Because the Haiti thing was a bunch. So it was after the fact, everything was amazing. And then the bank is like, okay, we have to do something. So,
Well, I mean,
that counts.
I mean, it definitely counts.
And then we try to mainstream some of the main features. This was a $1 million thing. It was for like a year and a half. Then we tried to mainstream some of the activities into the housing project, and we were not successful. Because at some point, the housing project, actually the rationale that was given to us, which was a good rationale, was that the housing project was this like Christmas tree that was dealing with like landscaping, electrification, water. It was so complex already that they say no more.
But that's the problem, no? We're always trying to like stick it in somewhere, you know? And it's not the.
Yeah, it's not sticking. So, and at the time, it didn't occur to me that we could have applied to JFDR. Continue. I don't know if that was a possibility back then.
And I got some good proposals from Hele in EAP.
Yeah.
On like preparing for climate DPOs and things and the gender aspects of that. I mean,
Right.
there's a lot that can be done.
Exactly. So even
yes.
So even before she came, the mental thinking mentality of people in Europe has changed because they have to read one of the it's so complicated.
You're working on many other things today? You're working on a lot of different things today? You seem very.
So what did you know?
One of
Kind of skills that teachers something that you can buy and you don't buy anything. There are kids who have already made a master on that, so they can go back and
All right. What is? Really? The government just changing their mind, or? Really? What's the problem?
Okay. No, I'm joking. Like, sounded like a good piece of gossip. That's why.
I don't know if it's the project I've been working for a year now.
Where?
The dimensional Yeah. But,
Very.
it's the, I think it's the legislation for some reason.
Sometimes it's because like someone in the chain of command just doesn't feel the ownership of it, or that they weren't involved enough or something, or
Spared yourself.
I hope they do it. They are very prone. They should be investing in this like crazy. They're incredibly prone to disaster.
Was it a think tank or I guess about 4 years? Yeah, about 4 years.
So Mario, how's Africa working? Are you working? But you're also doing global work.
yeah.
Half and half, or more like 70-30?
It's more like 80-80.
NDR, they used to be the National Bureau of Aging.
For me, I have like supposedly 60% of cross support, but first of all, there, and I'm working like really hard. 70% of my time, and then with the global.
And also, but not. Or national security defense.
Yeah, it's usually you give them 2 weeks and you end up doing 6
My
weeks.
country focused on like security studies, policy, and South Asia. So very different there. I went to see that.
They asked me to TTL on the phone, and now they want me to TTL.
There aren't
It's
many.
just 6 weeks of work.
It is 8, and then it's not that I have 6 weeks empty.
Many more.
But what's the mood now?
What is it more Treasury Department.
Some people from JPR.
Awesome. I saw that Thomas is.
They're like congregate together, right?
Social inclusion.
The School of International
Advisors. But I think that's nice, comfortable with that. Like, because a corporate mandate is it's very hard to get things to pay for it. I think she understands that like very fully. So she's very comfortable with it. A lot of things.
So is there clarity around how the unit sort of secretaries
The only thing that's clear that we are selling across the board knowledge while we do that. That's very clear. The knowledge can be done with PSBs, GSBs, with the regions, it doesn't matter. That's, in other words, I just gave a whole slide deck to Susan for the safeguard straight the base violence in construction. Most of the time, I work on inclusion. But occasionally, so I think it's safeguards and the fragility. Social inclusion is that. I don't know.
Did you do this training last, like spring as well? I did not. I was out too.
I don't know. I think it's very fast.
Regional coordinator.
Yeah. I could change that.
Yeah, there were no focal points for like RCs yesterday too.
Huh?
Especially because it's not counterintuitive, but if we have to review the graph,
Yeah.
you don't see this.
Hopefully there'll be another session really digging into actually how you apply it.
They're working with
I think we have another some
components.
exercise.
I think it'd be useful for them
She
because
brought it
it's a
because I
short
was
thing
thinking
of
for the
so you can actually
It's just like, come
analyze
here, you know, help me.
both on the front end and then later we do like something focused on M&E too.
What is actually, or what are the
Yeah, which is up through a checklist of sorts. It's interesting for us, but we don't necessarily have to.
The good news is that I think social, at least when you go to
Yeah, you stay now on the M&E?
That's mostly what I'm working on. Transition to that
Because the
last.
database kind of is completed.
I mean, it'll never, since
Well,
we've
it
been
never
telling.
completed because every 6 months you have to update.
Yeah, I mean, what I've been telling people is it'll never be complete. It's, I think, bad for people to.
It's a living document, no?
Yes.
But
Yeah.
at least like, the main information.
Well,
What you said up as phase 1 is done.
yes, just the
The
bare,
minimum information.
the bare phase 1 is done. I've been working with the IT team to develop the SharePoint site.
South Asia.
So we're integrating, like a link with
Collaborating.
staff data, for example. Now we'll have real-time, real-time understanding of commitments and disbursements and that type of thing. Or we were downloading from staff, uploading. So we're doing things like that. We're updating out the reporting. Also, that'll have to get updated again. Whatever indicators we develop. We're also, I've been working with them on developing workflows. So we can automate a reminder for one, how the TTLs get the reporting form, and then also kind of reminders again. Trying to put in steps in the system to help incentivize reporting.
Counteract that.
What's really
It's
have
complicated.
but really the biggest, one of the bigger challenges.
That part is good.
But what we finished this last round was just getting even this last FY16 reporting, so getting all that data into the system, and getting like the country profiles. The country profiles are all done except for like outstanding information.
And the country
The ones
is
on the
every
website.
6 months, I thought? Or not all of them?
They'll be updated annually. The ones on the website.
Audio. So why are you working on that?
I'm working on the
So now we're,
verbal definition.
I'll continue to play some role in kind of quality control for all the information. Yeah.
There's,
But
so
really
they're,
trying to
working on
have
all these
the focal
default
points,
sectors, and there's a
both here
climate
and then
change.
Brussels Tokyo take more ownership over.
I didn't get that much with the portfolio, like the quantitative
And
analysis.
I'm working in
What?
Madagascar.
I've been doing a
How,
little
what's
bit.
the level of
The
our grants
revenue.
and how moving on sector of production and all that.
I'm doing some work around that, but MJ will be taking over
to deal
more
with
and more of
the
that.
social cohesion.
She's very skilled in that area, so she'll be taking over more and more of that kind of work that Tap's been doing too. Be able to free him
That's
from
good. I have
Because I know that Melody has been helping a lot of the DRL preventing people.
Wow, exactly. How did that happen?
I mean, I'm
Everyone
thinking
is so
that, you know,
overwhelmed.
we will need to do again and
Oh,
we
yeah.
say report
and
the
then
next
working
week.
on this West African hotel area.
We don't have the data anymore. So I don't know who we should actually.
Oh, turn two for that one? Yeah, that's the kind of stuff we've been thinking about in the team, if we can staff that. Do you have a sense of why?
Because I know that GSUR, I mean, I know there was a meeting yesterday, but I'm trying also to make that
Voluntary.
Wow.
yes, GSUR was really, yeah, they are.
Right in the coast there.
I don't know what's.
On the co-benefits, right? Having to help facilitate that. Are they also supposed to be
Well, I
using?
think, it doesn't make sense. One side, the Copoliana is still there.
Visiting this guy's restaurant. The ocean is coming in the restaurant.
Separate.
Are they in theory? And they in theory also.
Especially if your team is doing like all these months about leveraging, how do you know what you leverage? You don't want the data.
I mean, my understanding is we're going to be still doing that. Some of that analysis. I mean, certainly the quality control, but then also doing that final analysis. Some sort of dashboard or something around that.
I guess the Kenyan
Is the Surfside leading on the DC report? Or that also be with the DC report? Will that be with GFDR? That'll be on Surf. But it'll be here. You'll need analysis for that too, aren't you?
It's going to be way smaller, most likely. We haven't really gone into it. That needs to happen. Layers and layers of habits.
There's Rashid is also
In terms of how, I mean, we're talking about stuff, how we've been provisioning staffing. MJ will likely play that role. She can support on that. Like she'll be doing the analysis for the annual report.
Because we need to see what's the outline and what's the way.
Yeah, how you can sequence all the timings and everything.
Robin who went too much young.
Yeah, never really easy year.
It's just,
But
I have too many days. I'm not Robin.
When
Proficient, yeah.
they are so different.
That's
buckets
that.
of things.
I think
No, but
the actual
apparently, I
Kenyan
mean, Robin, I have a more closer relationship, right? That's why it's a little bit of tension between because Young is really upset when his team are helping South Africa team. But,
We were doing the same thing for all the M&E deliverables, I mean, getting the program logic, the framework, and you know, like we're going to have a summer. I don't know.
what would you do for each manager? But basically, I have
Because
two
Naraya
projects.
and Nicola are about on mission. And then Nick is Eva was
It's very hard to work with fellows. Fellow managers. That
Sounds very nice.
only one might
Well, before you study,
know what I'm doing.
that was a try.
So sorry.
Something, I don't know, I saw the
I
email.
just have to do the.
How do you get one of these?
Absolutely.
Yeah, and then I report to friends. But then, my OP, everything is wrong. So I try and go over there.
We're going on this.
Yeah.
Yes, definitely. The chicken was just fun.
Directly on rocks. So as long as he controls parts of the sea, edge of the contribution.
No, and he's what's nice is he's gonna tell me yeah, I'm trying to get my French up. I asked for them and they said no, they do everything on the phone. So
Exactly what they told me.
What do I do?
yeah, I'm doing Duolingo every day.
I could get another.
Oh, that'd be a good idea. I think it would be. I was asking for a tutor because I need to get very specific technical language, you know? Because like being conversational is one thing, but governments about relocating communities, you know, when you have technical conversations. So, yeah, but maybe we should look into that.
But then, you know, the first
yeah.
Also, the people who are oh, sí.
Oh, please.
Sí. Dinner is solved. So it's, I don't like eating out. And I'm usually working in my room, and I just don't like taking a lot of time to go out and eat dinner. But you should. Because because this is a very luxury meal. Like, at least every Friday. Well, I'm not when I'm at home, it's when I'm tired. And I find whenever you're tired and you're just constantly having to change things. I know. Just something's not working. Yeah, I know. We just did that every time. During the day we're delivering. We were very prepared. At night we were taking at least 2 or 3 hours. Have to be in Richmond, but then and the dinner service in the restaurant of the hotel. Then that meant that we didn't have that much sleep. Either dinner or sleep. Yeah. And I'm sort of when I'm in the zone and I'm really concentrating on something. I just like to stay in there and just until I'm done. I'm going to collapse and find out to sleep tonight.
Rest.
But yeah, I'm kind of relieved that we're not doing the social development tomorrow. Such a mass round. No, it's good. Hydrate. All right. Nice to meet you. Bye. Thank you for joining us. This was in the same pile as that one.
Yes.
So they're okay. So yeah, I agree.
So,
Is that too much, Cynthia? Should we break it up? Is that too much if we break it up?
I either can. I got the impression to just keep it as it is.
Oh, really?
Or I can split them into groups. I think I will. They work backwards. Would they be able to work backwards from the different? I can't create a proposal. I can write something. That context or background.
They work backward from the pit to achieve the
The PID is for a project that fall familiar. Really?
yeah, that is.
It's the same information. So it's I'm just trying to decide whether says I guess I give the GFDR so they have that context for background. What is supposed to be but what the long is if they're successful get them to go retrospective and say to get to the point of this kid we were nice to end up designing a project that actually studies about those genders. What information do you collect what then on well then I'll leave it as it is. Do you think I should
scale, the Red Cross. Already moves. I would say. It's not PowerPoint slides. You did that exercise. Indonesia based disasters. I'm going to go right to this. I agree, and that's why that was why they. That was why before I chose the Senate because it was a very clear standard kind of project. It was an infrastructure plan to build drainage systems. Sí, escrito esta carta. Gracias por venir. No, tú estás, pero tú estás feliz. Bueno, entonces eso, te mando un email con un resumen, unos puntitos nada más. Mira, hablamos con nuestros managers, still talk por el tema de la accesibilidad, el dinero, papá. Los managers de Orban nos preocupados porque they are in falta, trabajan en la todo lo ideal es un claro, o sea, entender un poco ese a lo que conocemos, un poco empezar a aplicar. Pero hace el organigrama. Or I can do this. They don't know it's around. I've actually had to look for a language. ¿Cuál está en el título? De hecho, mi compañero de todo lo mismo. El trabajo de acá.
In the world, I thought there's every chance I get caught up on this.
No, bueno. Tengo una amiga que y anda mi idea. Contratando a alguien. Pero ya debería. No, yo sé, mira, que yo no, de la gente que sí, pero para un shortlist no tiene problema. Shortlist no tiene no tiene problema. Para eso, o sea, depende también de la profesionalidad. There are methodologies of doing this, and here's some references to review and do this that combine these things with it. So I took it out because I thought o sea, needs to meet everything.
Well, I got the impression. Well, no, she's talking about.
No, pero tiene una cosa muy buena. Mi estrategia. Trabaja, hace cosas. Está bien. Solo que yo me quiero agarrar a ella. Quiero coger a ella. Se ve que los inventa lo que trabajan solo. Después lo ves en Spark. Pregunta. Dos. Cosas más refrescantes tenían. ¿Por qué tan a una revolución? Saques con dinero. Claro. No. Un presentador, es un vendedor. No, es imposible. Y tan corto. Técnicamente, no, o sea, y yo creo que así porque mire, género, pero yo la conozco. No tienes your slides and Maria Beatrice's presentation. I loaded it all into in between the other things. Yeah, but I got to look at it. So everything just right here. So I just left it as she. Claro, no, porque el vínculo con operación. O sea, en general, de conocimiento.
Turn it off, turn it back on, and all results, and so we never knew what it was that was wrong in the first place.
Sí, tal vez genera un entenderá cómo funciona.
Whenever my husband gets on the computer,
Oye, o sea, no.
it's very frustrating. Like a blind trying to play, and I'm listening. I find that everyone's playing never works for me.
De acuerdo. De acuerdo. De acuerdo.
Okay, pretty soon we'll start again. I don't know if we have everybody back. On cue. Really waited for we've got Margaret and
Guillermo, and I guess Lana is coming back.
he's hiding from you behind his screen. Should we give them maybe 1 or 2 more minutes and then we'll start? Song in my head. I sang a few lines out to Margaret earlier in the context of something else, and now the song is just going over and over in my head. It's a good song.
I don't know. I mean,
We wrote a humorous version for a friend's birthday. Do you know Hallelujah, Leonard Cohen song? Secret. So it's the most covered song called Hallelujah.
kind of very special.
It's actually a really good song.
When just in the
So there's a line here that Baby, I'm beautiful. I heard these words on Walker's floor. I used to live.
Wow, you're quite the singer.
Do it in Leonard Cohen's voice.
No. I heard there was a secret chord that David knew, and it pleased the Lord. Unfortunately, I find Leonard Cohen dates is one of those things that dates you now. So it's, oh yeah, I was a Leonard Cohen fan.
Oh, but that song got a revival from I think the kids in Shrek.
Shrek.
Yeah.
I saw it in
And then he died last year, so they have revived it all again. But K.D. Lang did a beautiful version of it for the opening of the Calgary Olympics in 2010. She did this stunning version, and even he said it was one of his most favorite versions of his song. I'm not gaining, I'm losing. What did I say?
No, we lost Christine.
Do you know what, guys? I think I will start because I don't want to go over time and I want to make sure that we get through all the important stuff. And so we might just make a move and the others can join us when they make it back. So basically, as we move into this afternoon, we're now looking at getting down to some of the, nuts and bolts of how to make the DRM CCA programming more gender inclusive. And if you recall from this morning, the objectives here are to look at some of the tools and approaches and mechanisms for looking at barriers and opportunities and for capturing results. What I'm going to do is run you through a bit of a death by PowerPoint to start. Sorry to do that after lunch, which is usually the hardest time. But if we need to stop and do jumping jacks or something, we shall, just for this bit. What we will do is we'll do that, and then we're going to move into the scenario that I mentioned this morning. And we're going to start doing some work on trying to see what you would do to create a more gender integrated project that's a national CBDRM with infrastructure and capacity building components and the sort of typical sort of thing that you run across your desk. This is oriented, or because it's a mixed World Bank GFDR audience, it's oriented around the bank's project cycle. So I'm going to stop at various points and we'll talk a bit about the GFDR angle. So entry points and mechanisms in the project cycle. If you remember this diagram, this is the thing to embed in your brain before leaving here today. This is what you're going to be held accountable for. This is what we're looking for. And that's both Francis and the donors for the GFDR and the bank for those of you who are a bank. It's to get this bit right. To have a really well done gender analysis informing your project designs, development and designs, to identify specific actions, measurable actions that can be taken to promote gender equality in the programming in a contextualized, sensible manner. And then to have performance indicators and some kind of plan for how you're going to assess how you're doing this. All of this should not be something standalone. What we're looking at is how to embed those gender-sensitive approaches into the work you're already doing. That's what this is about. And it was mentioned this morning about the gender tags, just in case some of you hadn't seen them. This was adopted, wasn't it, Marianne? July, yeah. Yeah. So July 2016, these are the updated gender tags that Maria Beatriz was referring to that moved, in the case of the World Bank, from a more equity approach, if you go from this morning's discussion, to an equality approach in programs. That's a big shift. And it's the wording actually looks similar to the old one, but it's the nuances of what you're being asked to do. There's a few key words in there that make it a little bit more challenging. So that's what it looks like. And you should have a bit of paper that has these 3 tags on it. If you'd like to take a look at that, you might want to take a look at it again when we come to the exercise. And it's just those things: analysis, action, indicators in the results framework. If you are looking at a GFDRR funding proposal, you should be looking for these exact same things. You're looking for the same things to be in it. You're looking for evidence, or you're dialoguing with the partner government, the client, about where gender analysis will fit into the development of risk assessment, hopefully working that out and budgeting for it. Then as you move into the design of the actual activity, or the people you are funding move into it, that they are armed with that gender analysis that's giving them good information about how gender fits into their world. And you are walking with them hand in hand, or your people out in the regions, I assume, walking with them hand in hand through how to get this into the design and identifying some activities or ensuring that gender is integrated into whether it's a study or a plan that you're working on with the government or even a training, that it's in there, and then how you're going to measure and tell the donors that you've been doing a good job. And they are getting more and more, how did I put it, Margaret? They're getting more and more demanding about this. The donors, they're jumping up and down a bit more about wanting to see more of this, and this is essentially what they're looking for. It's the same thing as what the bank's trying to do. Okay, I've split it between disaster risk risk reduction and climate change adaptation, and we'll do post-disaster after. A little bit on that. Okay, I'll ask you this. Basically, so starting with the gender analysis, I think you've had it hammered at you about 200 times the importance of doing it. The main reason, just to go back through that again, the reason we're doing it when we're thinking of designing an activity or a project is to make sure that the different roles that men and women currently have in that place don't have unintended adverse impacts on our program or project results, that we're not getting an unexpected outcome, that, for example, that our early warning information system that we've set up is not reaching a lot of the community members, or not reaching certain types of communities effectively. So we want to make certain that we understand that context. To check that we're not creating new barriers for women and girls to access the project or to benefit from it. In essence, what that means is that we're not introducing unintentionally new forms of discrimination and exclusion of women and girls from the benefits of that programming. And an example of where that can happen is that you set up a training program, let's say, for government officials who work in disaster risk management oriented services on, let's say it's risk analysis. And you ask the government to nominate who's going to come, and you don't specify that you want a certain proportion of those to be men and women. And then someone says, when you do say that, oh, but we don't have many women here. Well, who are the women that you could be working with that would be the stakeholders in the development of your risk analysis? Are there people from another government department we should be inviting, which is sometimes like the Ministry of Social Welfare or the Ministry of Women's Affairs. We've done this in places to bring in other parts of government that do have an understanding of these issues into the conversation and start to build linkages. And the other thing can also be groups that represent the interests of various subgroups of the population that could be given the opportunity to have input or to participate in that training as well, or have input even to consultations about what you would like your risk assessment or your strategy to look like, what should be in it. So having a dialogue about bringing those people to the table, and as Margaret sort of touched on it a little bit earlier, there are organizations out there that actually do specialize in issues like gender in disaster risk management, on social mainstreaming as well. So they are out there, but of varying capacities and size, and that will depend on the country. We just have to suss it out. In Australia, we just have to investigate it. So if you're not doing that, and if you just say, yeah, let's just design some workshops and have some consultations, and you don't make it really a specific part of the conversation, this is when we start to build more barriers to the women to be a part of that process. We're adding to the barriers by keeping them invisible. And that the results of the program don't affect the men and the women differently. We don't want an early warning system that when the first disaster hits and puts it to the test, that we're still seeing these big discrepancies between death rates of men and women. We want those death rates to be dropped, to be equalized, like they're trying to do in Bangladesh. this is just a visual way of depicting what kind of information we're looking for. What are we looking for in the analysis, in the gender analysis? So we want to have a greater depth of understanding of gender relations between men and women, their different roles, their different power relationships, as we talked about this morning. And we want to understand how those different roles and power relations are going to affect the expected results of our proposed policy or program activity. So we're trying to capture that information and analysis to guide our program decisions. We're also looking at how will the results of the actual activity that we're doing impact on men and women. So one is about more focused on the process and the role they play in your project or program or activity. The other is focused on how can that policy or program or project benefit them. I'd like you to give a go, because we've talked about this enough now. I would like at each of your tables, have a go. I know you haven't done it before, but you've been coming up with some pretty good analysis this morning of gender factors. I would like you to think about if you were going to start looking at designing a DRM program and you wanted to understand more about gender in the context of that program, what do you think would be the three most important topics that you would like, if you were going to ask a consultant, hey, go out and do this for me, I need to understand A, B, and C about gender in terms of my activity. What do you think are the three most important things that you would need to find out? And let's take the example of, to make it quite focused, let's say what Lana was talking about this morning, a floodwater.
Flood risk management.
So let's say we're looking at flood risk management, and what you're looking at is you're at a conceptual phase of looking at having an activity together with the government to do a preliminary risk assessment. And we'll just say you're looking at a preliminary risk assessment. Have a crack at it at your tables. What do you think would be the three most important things that you would like to ask your consultant to find out?
Risk management and adaptation. So it's not for relief or for.
Right.
Mm-hmm. So the risk, this risk assessment, is it done always when you do?
Always, you will to do a flood assessment.
Okay.
Flooding, for instance.
Oh, sorry, I forgot to mention, guys. See those pink sheets of paper? Each of your three things, you write them down.
Want to know, like, what's the flood level that you might expect? So you might know what the area is and how flooding. And then you would try to do a custom analysis. Us to do that project versus what you expect. As far as the gender.
This is after you have the.
I mean, without knowing anything about how risk assessment can look this year, for example, what's the situation for women, for example, of taking care of kids when they have to evacuate? Is it easier for them? Is it easier for them to do it or not? Like, daycares. Assuming kids usually are raised in daycares, close to daycares, they have evacuation drugs.
Those are gaps that are
Really
created as a result
vulnerable,
of
right?
them.
Yeah, as a result, yeah. That's a difficult part now.
But
Rick,
I
I wonder,
I
like when
think
you have the data from the flood risk assessment, which is probably a lot more complicated than other types of assessments, but is there a way to overlap with other existing data sets like demographics or household data, so that you can know if there, in case there is a flood, what's the exposure and who's exposed? I guess.
That's the second
That it
question.
would come into the exposure aspect.
Okay.
We would want
I
to
see.
Okay, not
I
so
see.
much.
say what is where how would you like just I would be interested in asking a survey of where was it for the houses.
Things like that. Yeah.
So that if that and then also coupled with that what's the percentage of all of them leave and they go someplace else and homes are all flooded.
Or vice versa.
There's gender difference there.
And also in terms of probably like livelihoods, right? Like if there's a difference, gender difference of something getting flooded, that is probably where people, I don't know, like crops, and then all of a sudden people who are there are all men, or people are all, or there's a difference there that you could, that's information you could have, and you could overlap with them with a more technical kind of like level and how fast it will flood and.
Else, maybe that would be things like where are schools located?
Yes.
You would think
Yeah.
overall, you have to
Probably
take the
go
kids,
to
And the children, to assess the risk exposure of the children.
At the first stage of the risk assessment, which is purely kind of scientific, risk assessment, we could also pitch in, like what kind of data will be needed in the next step. Like you said, where the people, the demographic, allocations,
Right.
So if we can at least to give a kind of heads up to the government, okay, we need this kind of information as
Right.
a next step to think about,
Right.
what kind of countermeasure we can take up. Then maybe they have enough time to, kind of do at least a kind of preliminary, like data collection, maybe. Because, most of the cases when we come to the discussion, okay, how we can, inform gender aspect into the project development, we don't have any data. So at least, yeah.
But the data is
yeah, but then at least,
But any
when
data,
we-
I'm sorry, I don't understand something. This data is all in the household surveys. The countries where we work usually have household surveys. So maybe
Yeah.
the agency you're working with doesn't have it, but it
Maybe.
can be requested, as
Yeah,
you
that's
said.
true.
It can be requested.
And
It
then
can be sent.
between different organizations, they don't share the information. And
Right.
data, yeah, maybe
Right.
it's-
And that's
yeah.
also an issue. Like in the case of the Dominican Republic, for example, we weren't given that detailed information. We were given access to a more national, broader, but we can't get down to the.
But the poverty team has the surveys, has the microdata for the poverty
Yeah, we work. so,
assessment, generally. I mean, I don't know the case.
so
but
in this case, we're actually working with our team, and they were just very. We met with the agency that develops all this data, and they're just. They're very. They keep it very close for.
So meaning that you cannot get it disaggregated for the geographic area that you needed.
So I don't know what the technical term is, but there is some sort of how detailed you can get, and it was very broad level. So we couldn't in this particular case do to a level of knowing, in this household there's likelihood that there will be more people living here. They've been gone to work.
Right. No, that level you don't have. Right. 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 Yeah.
It's just like places where you know, I mean, maybe they should be.
Also, we could work with the Poverty GP to improve this data set as a georeference data
Exactly.
set.
The georeferencing sometimes is not there.
So that we can make sure that this data exists in Poverty GP can be used for our
georeferencing is very important.
How do you go about it?
Verification with the community or
That's the project and
right.
We can go down to say state administrative, state or county. And there's other cases where you actually use sites. It really depends on the plan.
Goes back to some. Let's take the alternate cases.
That's
Exactly.
So that's actually a lot.
There are a lot of amazing experiences of women groups doing community mapping of risk and also safety, not just for disaster purposes, but also for safety.
My understanding is this risk mapping exercise at the community level is not informing investment planning. It's more for community risk awareness. So I think we are talking about different things. Because the risk assessment you're talking about is basically to form up the bank's investment. So we try to come up with dollar value. Okay, how much of investment we need and what kind of intervention is needed. But then this community risk mapping, my understanding is more to awareness raising and how to use this, kind of subproduct of this risk assessment. Maybe I'm not. Yeah.
That's also. Those maps, partnering with the cities, charter programs, also the risk assessment forming other sectors, education, schools, transport, the Salanco, logistics, mainstream information in other sectors.
Also, I think the level of depth that you said, how much scope that you cover under this assessment. It could be very shallow, high level things, and then also it could be very deep things. Can be utilized for different purposes.
It depends on what you want to use.
Yeah.
And that in itself is a pretty good outcome, right? Like,
Oh God.
And being a gender
We have three.
Lucky.
Lucky.
What you think? Sort of generic way that if you're doing verification, maybe with district level forums, maybe one or the other, maybe both. I'd be interested to see the documents, what information you need. one-pointers. So everyone else can.
I love it. It's so quick.
I think that's type of job for me.
Yeah.
I have a handwriting like a it's good. But I'll still do it.
Go for it.
No, I can write more clearly when I.
Color coding. Gradual.
Some time.
But it would still come into play where it's probably flooded in it's more that does still play. So what are our 3 points?
Yeah, that is basically more relevant during the exposure, right?
Yeah.
But important topic to be
So
analyzed.
we were talking about where do people work, where are the schools. I
If
mean,
there's gender, I would like to know if there's gender differences in terms of where, like, who's in the house or who's.
Or demographic distribution.
And then how many people work outside
I would say like just diurnal variations, daily variations.
Exposure.
Is that enough?
Yeah, the transit.
the
Variation.
transit is, it will give you, I mean, you don't need to get into the gender dynamics so much, to be honest. If you know who's traveling where, you can infer a little bit, you know, what the dynamics are.
Variations in
Daily spatial variations in spatial.
We can just explain.
Where are the schools located, where are the jobs located. We know that,
Dynamics.
and we know there are differences between men and women.
Yeah.
So,
And hopefully,
yeah. And we know that affects men and women differently, generally. So it's more like you can infer a little bit. Exactly. So if the school floods, you know that the impact is the community mapping or no? That's not like okay.
at the beginning.
At the beginning. Okay.
Because community mapping is part of
I see.
the exercise.
Yeah.
The location for like where the water sources are.
Yes, that's very important.
Yeah, take those.
If the community has water connections to the household and electricity or not, or if women are fetching water or, that's important for us to know.
Oh, I wondered, connecting to that, maybe, sometimes the flood could happen because of the people's habit. They took too much of water, or maybe not the flood, but so maybe where the vulnerability exists because of the human behavior. Maybe
The vulnerability.
exists, yeah,
You've got 1 more minute.
because of human behavior, not the natural.
The man-made.
As I say, usually a lot of people in Germany cities when they go to pick up their cars.
Parking garage.
Because, for example, water fetching is specific to the women. So, if they don't know how much water they can take, and then maybe that will create a water scarcity in the community. But I don't know whether it's related to flood.
I don't know. I was thinking access to information. I'm not sure that's something that goes into the assessment, but it's more an action.
Seems an action.
It would definitely go into the broader
I'd just like to get
risk
everyone to
management project.
come over to the
Also
walls.
good to know whether women are literate or not.
Or what,
So,
sorry?
literate. So
Oh, yes,
yeah,
yes,
they
yes.
can read it.
finally the light one.
Okay.